The bard on duty to inflict Aero Erosion, Ciaccona is gracing us with a musical performance. While she is the undeniable best Aero Erosion character, considering there's only one, so victory by default, but she gets an insane power increase from Aero Rover. So the question that comes to mind is, does Ciaccona need Aero Rover? With Zani being released in the Spectral Frazzle team, she is useless without no Frazzler, but is Ciaccona the same? My name is Void Enigma, and I'll be discussing the implications of Ciaccona without Aero Rover, as well as how great she is with them. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and as always, let the music sway into the void. Firstly, we gotta discuss the importance of Aero Erosion, so I'll explain how it works. Aero Erosion is quite different from Spectral Frazzle in a few ways, so let's talk about it. Firstly, the higher the stack of erosion, the higher the damage. Also, Aero Erosion does damage every 2 seconds about, and every time it does damage, it does not tick down. It stays at the same stacks no matter what. You will see the duration of the effect here, and once the duration disappears, then the whole debuff is gone, and you'll have to stack it up again. So you need to apply a new stack of Aero Erosion every 15 or so seconds. Ciaccona will be able to do that quite easily, every second in fact, so keeping up the stacks is no issue with her. So all in all, the more stacks of Aero Erosion, the more damage you do every 2 seconds or so. And you need to apply a new stack of erosion every 15 seconds. As everything stands, Ciaccona on her own can apply a constant stream of 3 stacks of erosion, and let's see what 3 stacks of erosion gets you. As of now, with no buffs, 3 stacks of erosion gets you 3k damage on the Infernal Rider in the tower. This is less against enemies who are aero resistant, like the monkey, so keep that in mind. Now logically, you'd think that Aero Rover using the Aero set could crank up that damage, right? After all, it's more aero damage, right? But here's a kicker, it doesn't. At all. The set's multiplier don't apply to the erosion tick, so you're basically wasting potential trying to scale something that refuses to scale. The increased multipliers does not apply to erosion, so erosion exists as its own damage type. Therefore, Ciaccona on her own will apply about 3k damage every 2 seconds, which kinda sucks. It's about 1500 DPS, and while 3k damage every 2 seconds might sound okay, until you realize that she's just banning someone to death with sheet music, you're technically doing something, but it's not going to carry your performance. Now what Ciaccona does give is a 100% Aero Erosion damage amp, doubling the damage of the songstress's reverb, so realistically, Ciaccona will get about 6k damage every 2 seconds without the support of Aero Rover. That's slightly better, but it's still not that great in value. We've upgraded to actually smacking her enemy over the head with Ciaccona's loot, but we could do better, right? So what's the damage that we get when we actually use Aero Rover's outro buff? Well, to be honest, Aero Rover's outro is low-key broken. Not only does it boost the Aero Erosion stack, but it also has practically no downtime. It's a 30-second buff and is easy to maintain, and it's active after the first rotation, and you barely even notice that it's up because it never goes down. This makes it one of the most consistent damage amplification buffs in the entire game, especially for characters like Ciaccona who thrive on the Aero Erosion uptime. This buff lets you double the amount of Aero Erosion, doubling the cap from 3 to 6. With 6 stacks of erosion and no other buffs like the one baked into Ciaccona's kit, we go from 3300 to 8200 damage per 2 seconds. That is a staggering 150% increase, which means that with Ciaccona's outro, we are going to be doubling that. We'll be getting 16,000 erosion damage every 2 seconds. That's 8k DPS passively, which is actually something to write home about. This turns Ciaccona into a hypersonic songstress that will make the enemy's ears bleed.
What's happening? She's singing menacingly.
It's like a techno rapture on the enemies, am I right? So without Aero Rover, Ciaccona can deal about 3k DPS with erosion, but with Aero Rover, then that is going to go up substantially to 8k damage per second. To put things into perspective, Zhezhi does about 6900 per tick, so about 7k DPS off field. This does go down if she's not fully buffed with passives and Shorekeeper's buff, so this 8k damage is definitely up there with Ciaccona and Aero Rover, and that's kind of amazing. Plus, Ciaccona does decent damage on her own to actually kind of equal out to Judgy's on-field damage. So Ciaccona without Aero Rover is like solo Ciaccona in a band. She will really be thinking, I need my duo Q partner, but Ciaccona is a hell of a lot more than an Aero Erosion enabler. She is in fact a solo star. She does decent sub-DPS damage, and she also buffs arrow damage of all teammates passively, similar to an Ultra buff. Additionally, just by using the Aero Erosion set, she gives your arrow teammates additional damage amp to surpass the normal Ultra buff of arrow damage by the likes of Alto. So yeah, she is great at buffing arrow characters and will apply some decent sub-DPS damage, but she does lose a significant amount of damage by simply not using Aero Rover. Also remember, Aero Rover has an amazing signature sword, which grants a team-wide arrow damage buff when you're using Aero Rover's Forte Circuit attack, Unbound Flow. It's 10% for now, but when we actually manage to get refinements, it goes all the way up to 26% arrow damage amplification, which is more than an Ultra buff. So this means that Ciaccona is a suitable sub-DPS for any arrow character without Aero Rover, but with Aero Rover, Ciaccona's ceiling is increased by a lot. So does Ciaccona need Aero Rover? As it stands, yes. In order to have a meta team, she does need Aero Rover, but you can still use Ciaccona in many other teams without Aero Rover. It's just not the best option. Will you clear content without Aero Rover? Yes, 100%. But will you do it better with Aero Rover? Again, yes, 100%. Now, a lot of things really depends on just what Cartethyia can do, however. If she is a character like Zani who uses Erosion to buff her own damage, everything that I said can change drastically. It might be better to buff Cartethyia's overall damage with a character like Shorekeeper, rather than focusing on buffing Aero Erosion. Personally, I do hope that Cartethyia can function on her own, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Once Cartethyia drops though, I'll be doing a full breakdown and see how she fits into the Aero Erosion ecosystem. So please hold off on pulling Ciaccona until you actually know how that works. We should know before Ciaccona's banner actually ends. I'll definitely have a full guide while Ciaccona's banner is still online, so definitely stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. So Ciaccona does thrive with Aero Rover. Keep that in mind. To reach your full potential, you are going to need to use Aero Rover. It's also kind of funny that Aero Rover does suspiciously high damage, so the sub-DPS potential is 100% up there. So if you want to get the best out of Ciaccona when she launches, then just use the main character that you already have on your account. If you vibe with this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more enigmatic content. It helps the channel out way more than you think. I've got way more deep dives coming for future characters, as well as more things about Ciaccona, so you definitely don't want to miss it. This has been Void, an Enigma,